In the Torah portion of בהעלותך, at the very end of chapter 10, you see the letter Nun, the Hebrew letter Nun, coming out the upside down, the opposite way, twice before the two important psukim. Vayihi bin Suah Aaron, and the ark was journey. Vayomer Moshe, Moses said, Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha, arise, O Lord, and let your foes be scattered. V'yanusu mesanecha mipanecha, and let those who hate you flee from before you. When we're opening the ark, that's the line we say. Right. Then when we return the Torah to the ark, when it's rested, Moses will say, arise, reside tranquility, O Lord, among the myriads, thousands of Israel. So the question is, what this has to do with the two nooning that comes out the opposite way? Why it's here, and why it's marked in such a way? So I will start with the point of departure, explaining a little bit what's involved here, and then we go deeper, which is the whole concept of spirituality and tefillah and prayer. First, let's handle this one. The portion of בהעלותך has many components, many different things. One of the issue in בהעלותך, it's the idea that it was a preparation for the upcoming big war, the war over the land, the occupation of the new property, the new land that the children of Israel is about to take over. So because there is a certain preparation, certain decorum, that one of the way to do it is like separate this and prepare them. What do I mean by that? They are now in a desert. So the Talmud said in Tractate Shabbat, if you want to see in a text, you find it in page 115 in Shabbat, that they said that the Talmud said that it was recorded by the divine, these two nun, the opposite, because when you look at the Psalm Ashrei, the Psalm Tehillah David that we have in our prayer we cite every day, twice, the letter Nun is missing, because Nun in Hebrew, it's basically nofel, it's some downfall, it's expression of failure, and because that's something that they wish upon all those enemies, they put the Nun in the upside down, the opposite way, before and after. It's like asking the divine to help us, because we are in a sense slaves who left the land of Egypt, and we are weak and tired and unarmed in a sense, and we are about to conquer the 7 nations and all the challenges involved with this. Therefore there is a need of special protection. That's one way of understanding it. But
Can I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Will I screw up your...
No, you're fine, you can interrupt.
But there must be other places in the Torah where there are similar...
No, Nun and Nun?
No, not Nun, but the reason that you just mentioned, that there is a special circumstance that requires this to happen.
Excellent. So that's one of the challenges the rabbis put in this statement, and they said here it's different because the next one speaks about people who constantly complain. It means that if we do not suffer from those people who constantly complain, then the whole journey is supposed to be a days of journey. If you record carefully the text, they left the Egypt, it's splitting the sea, manna from heaven, Torah, and they sent a spy. And the spy went there and returned with the evil report, the majority of the spies. And as a result, that 10 spies and all that generation died. Only their children were able to conquer the land. Because of that, because of the complainer, because of the message that we lost 40 years of our journey, and all that generation, it's expression not only of the enemies, some said, but it's expression of all those people who are self-destructive to our own people. Abarbanel, which is your side coming in this weekend, is the great Spanish rabbi who was the Minister of Finance in Spain at the time of Fernando and Isabel. and he was one of the really exceptional individuals that not only a Torah scholar but also a treasurer. He forced out penniless on Spain because he refused to convert to Christianity. But in his interpretation of the Torah, which was well accepted, he wrote that this idea, and I just read you the words that he said, Ha'ot nun rashi tevot hi shel hamila nasa, that it's abbreviation of the word nasa, meaning journey, move, travel. Kavanat Torah, the meaning of the Torah to say it, that even the art of covenant move from one to another, like the flags and all this description of the art, it was proceeding with two separate journeys, which means one when they left Egypt, one and they entered to the great desert, but the second one is at the end of that journey. So it's like he tried to say, without tremendous amount of divine protection, which express it symbolically with these two noons, the children of Israel will not be able to survive the great challenges in the desert. But it's also divided to the next part, which is the constant complainer of people. In other words, it's like the contradiction between, it's like show that this part is like separate between the journey earlier and a recognition of God protection versus the other one that express these negative and bitter people.
Why the letter Nun? There could be any other letter. It could be changed.
Because the letter, it's a good question. The letter Nun, if you look at the famous Psalm Ashrei that we said every day, it's missing the letter Nun. Letter Nun in our writings, especially in the Talmud, the letter Nun, it's expression of downfall. It's Nun. If you look at the way that Nun Sofit written or Nun, it's like failing. It's like in the Hebrew word Nafal, meaning fail. And it's expression of some failure, which is, some say that it's like want to tell us that this portion is not really belong here. It shouldn't be here between these people who constantly complain versus the divine providence that protect and brought manna from heaven and do all the goods. It's a very nice interpretation from Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi, one of the great early rabbis, who said that the whole goal of all of that is to imply that they should be and deserve to be in the land very early, but because they went around and around and around and around and the opposite way for the real goal, which is the entering the promised land, that's the reason why it's expression of the Nun, that in one hand they have the divine, on the other hand, because of all these embittered negative people, the children of Israel will not be able to conquer the land right away in the proper time. They need to go around and go around. So that Nun is like expression of something. The interpretation that I feel in a way more comfortable, it's a interpretation that mentioned in the Maharsha, one of the rabbinic commentator on the Talmud. He said that the men of the Great Assembly, they want to in a way sweeten the destruction of the temple, because in these two lines you basically speaks about opening the ark, which is the time of the great glory of the divine, and returning the Torah to the ark, and each Nun representing different destruction of different temple. And the reason for that, they try to say that it's implication of two destruction of two temples, and asking God, if you look at the word, they said when it rested, it should say, arise, O Lord, right? Reside tranquilly, O Hashem, among the myriad of thousands of Israel, which is asking God for the redemption and rebuilding. So there is a statement of the sages in the Talmud, in Tractate Rosh Hashanah 17. The rabbi said that it's also implication for the future, that people should cry out at the time of distress, pray and ask for God's help at the time of distress. So the idea is that they want to tell us that even the time that you have in one hand like the glory of the Lord is hidden. On the other hand, you have tremendous complaining from people who are bitter. There is still a divine there that it's in a way not only a transcendental, but it's also a living divine. So with that in mind, I would like to go a little further with what I handed to you, which is several important sources. Can you pass me here so I can go over some sources? I don't have it at the front. Thank you. So the first one, it's a source in the Tractate of Brachot. When it's come to prayer, and it's come to, here we speak about the importance of prayer. The ark is open, and we said, arise, O Lord, we ask God, and let your foes be scattered. So the Talmud said, it has been stated, Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Hanina said, that tefillot, the prayer, instituted by the patriarch. So one opinion is that the patriarch, meaning Abraham, like morning prayer, and they bring all the sources. Isaac, afternoon, Jacob, evening. And they said, the Talmud said in the Tractate Brachot, the patriarch instituted the tefillah, and the rabbis found a basis for them in the offerings, which means that there is a concept of prayer. In the ancient time it was a offering. In our days they substituted by our lips, by our worship of prayer. Now, when we said in Shema the word le'ovdo, we said to serve. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one, the Lord is only one, the Lord is one. Then it said, you shall love your Lord your God with all your heart, with all your might, with all your soul. Right? And then he said, to serve you, Lord, with all your heart and all your might. This repeats several times. So what does that mean, to serve God? So there are several ideas when it's come to goal of prayer. The first one is the Maimonides. The Maimonides said in the code, see the next page, they said in the code of prayer, he said, Mitzvat aseh lehitpalel bekol yom. Maimonides tells us something that we know, that it's an affirmative commandment to pray each and every day. Shene'emar, it said in the book of Exodus, Va'avadetem et Hashem Elokechem, you shall serve the Lord your God. So from this tradition, בפי השמועה למדו, שעבודה זוהי תפילה. That the proper way, the service of the Lord, the service of a prayer, how you serve it, with all your heart, it's in your lips, in your prayer. Use the word uleovdo bechol levavchem in Deuteronomy. The sages commented, right? What is they commented? They said, Eizo hi avodah shebalev. What is the type of service of the heart? Prayer. Meaning, when you pray, it's a serve of your heart. That's one school of thought. In the Hebrew shorashim, in the Hebrew words that each letter has 3 letters of shoresh, roots. Serve, le'ovdo, it's come from the Hebrew letters avad, ain, bet, dalet, which means serve in one way. But if you look carefully at the Hebrew dictionary or the Hebrew roots, you see that it's also the word avodah. Avodah meaning work. So in that sense, the goal of the prayer is to serve, to pray, but to work. What does that mean, to work? To work for God? I found over the years, I read in the book by a great Rabbi Eliezer Levi, it's a great scholar in Israel who wrote extensively about prayer and the meaning of prayer, beautiful research. And also you see it in Rabbi Hirsch, the great German rabbi, who wrote also in the Pentateuch, in his commentary, that to serve God, meaning ito. Ito in Hebrew, Aleph, Yud Taf Vav, or Aleph Taf Vav, meaning with God. Now you have to really put your head and heart with this, because it's a little deep. serving someone, you serve. You go to some company and you work in a service department, so you serve someone. You get paid for service. There is another concept, you do partnership. You work for a company as a partner with someone. Together, you have the same objective, the same goals. Sometimes you are a big partner, sometimes you are a small partner, but you work even as employee, but also as a partner. So, for example, when the Torah tells us, and Joseph and his brothers, they couldn't speak with him at peace. ולא יכלו דברו לשלום. They couldn't speak with him. So Rashi right away said, לא יכלו דברו, they couldn't speak with him, לדבר עמו. The brothers of Joseph couldn't speak with him. What does that mean? Couldn't speak with him. Speak with him, the with, meaning the communication between the brothers and Joseph. The lack of communication, the lack of partnership between the brothers create separation, create later on distractions. We said, for example, at the beginning of Bereshit, creation, when God created, and then we have the Shabbat, they said, Asher bara Elokim la'asot, that God created la'asot, meaning to better the world. So, in that sense, work with God, it's when we said in Shema, with all your heart, with all your full heart, not to serve Him, but to work with Him. Now, if you go to Rabbi Hirsch, what he said, Hitpalel, it's from the Hebrew letter Palal, Pei Lamed Lamed, which means from Tfilah is derived. Originally meant to deliver an opinion about oneself, to judge oneself. Thus, it denoted to step out of active life in order to attempt to gain a true judgment about oneself. That is about one's ego, about one's relationship to God and the world. Accordingly, you should at times tear yourself loose from this existence which endangers your true life, and strive to, in tefillah, to renew your strength for life and regain your right and your will for truth, righteousness, and love, as well as the power and the courage for victorious battle. So Rav Hirsch here said something very important about a person's self, about the ego of a person. He said that when you are praying, you basically, in a way, judge. You have some type of self-judgment. You ask yourself, did my share with God? Or as a community, have we done our share to, in a way, have some conversation with God together? The idea of ego, it's like inner self, the relationship with God. Imagine it's like two entities. Each of them wants to communicate. In a sense, God wants to communicate, and we want to communicate with God. And each one of them, by trying to have some type of communication, that's the action of prayer. That's the tefillah. That's the spiritual part of the prayer. That's the meaning of the prayer. It's not so much of the consequences at this point, or the result, or the motive behind the prayer, but the prayer itself. It means, it's like a famous Hasidic story. You hear me giving a lot of Hasidic story. It's about a girl, young girl, that came to a Hasidic Rebbe. And she said, imagine she's 6 years old, first grade in school, and they all play seek and hide. And she was full of tears, and she said, Rebbe, I was hiding and no one searched for me. It's already second, third time I play with all the kids, I hide and no one was searching for me. So the Rebbe said to her, oh, now you get exactly what God feels, which is very deep. But the point is, it's like God in a search for man, God in a search for partnership with us, but it's go in both ways. So just by have this attempt, by the seeking, by the goal of the prayer, it's goal by itself. What does that mean? There are people who walk in a synagogue with, or to pray with a laundry list. Look, God, it was very hard for me to get out of bed. I didn't sleep enough, but I make it here. I would like you to help me with my stocks. Or God, it was very cold. It was a cold winter, and I made it for the study. I made it for whatever you asked me to do. So in exchange, I expect you to help me with my health, wealth, whatever I need. That's, in our simple language, we call it laundry lists. You come and try to have a business partnership with God. This is what I'm doing, what you give me in exchange. Okay? But here the goal is not what you're expecting God to do for you, right? It's like someone asked one of my teachers, he said, how come God allow, if God is the creator and God is a loving God, how come God allow poverty in the world? How come God allow so much lack of justice in the world? Right? And the Rebbe answered and he said, I'm afraid that if I ask this question, God will ask me those questions. In other words, since we are partner, so how come we allow that to happen? So it's a little deep and complicated point, but the key point when it's come to prayer, it's either you said, I'm going to push a reset button when I'm about to communicate with God. So the prayer, it's in a sense holy. It's our responsibility for humankind. That's what Rav Hirsch said. So the mitzvah, the commandment, the affirmative commandment to pray every day, it's the service of being partner of something bigger than our small needs, and without constantly expecting to something in exchange. That's one point. If you go a little further, you see what they tell us about prayer. What is a prayer? So they said, if you look at the feeling of the prayer, what is the prayer? If you look at the Siddur, at our prayer book, and I ask you a question, what is the most common prayer that we use? It's not the Vayhi bin Suaron, that we're doing only Monday, Thursday, Shabbat, when we open the ark.
Kaddish.
Can you tell me? Yes. Kaddish, nice David. Kaddish, the prayer, Kaddish, is the most common prayer. Now, within Kaddish, Kaddish is basically a constant prayer. You see it all the time. But if you pay attention at the Kaddish, you see that it's always at the end of important section of prayer. You finish the preliminary service, you have Kaddish. You finish the Amidah, you have Kaddish. You finish the song of the day, Aleinu, etc., you have Kaddish. So it's not just Kaddish, it's the half Kaddish, the Chetzi Kaddish. Now, within Kaddish, what word is the most used in a Kaddish?
Amen.
Kadosh.
Kadosh. Kadosh is important word, but in a Kaddish there is word Yitkadel v'Yitkadesh Shmei Rabbah. The word Shmei repeats itself the most times. בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך יתברך תדע נשמע שמי דקודש הבריחו. The word Shmei repeats all the time. Shmei, it's Shem Hashem, the name of God. Shem, name, Yud K is the name of God. If you read the story of Abraham and Sarah, It's written about Abraham, Vayikra b'shem Hashem, that Abraham, he did which we call the ethical monotheism to the world. He called upon the name of God. So when we say the Kaddish, we say this common prayer, Yitkadal, we magnified and sanctified the name of God, Shmei Rabbah. So we want to have this system of ethic to bring to the world. By magnify the name of God, we magnify, we bring this ethic, the whole system of ethics to the world. That's what we call Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. And that's what we said at Vene'emar, at the end of the Aleinu, we said that in that day the name of God will be one and He is one, which is the monotheistic belief that God and ourselves, the divine with ourselves, in a sense it's one, that our outline, our responsibility, it's connected, it's all one entity. So that's the idea of Shmei, the name of God. And it's so important to see what the Nachmanides said as he enumerates the mitzvot. So he said as follows. In the Sefer mitzvot, in the book of commandment, positive commandment number 5, he said as follows. שנתפלל אליו בעת הצרות. You see it on page 1. נתפלל אליו בעת הצרות. That we pray to God in time of distress. בעת הצרות. ותהיינה עינינו וליבנו אליו לבדו, and our eyes and hearts be directed toward God like servants in the hand of their masters. Okay? וזה כעניין שכתוב, that's exactly what it's written, and you see it in our parasha, when you come to war and you land against your enemy and besiege you, you will sound the trumpet and you will remember before the Lord your God. And it is a commandment to call out litzok to God for every distress that come upon the community. So in that sense, prayer goes to many different directions. Prayer can be some type of communication. Prayer can be a hope. And prayer, it's like Jacob said when he saw Joseph, he said, Re'o fanecha lo pilalti. Pilel, lehitpalel, meaning I yearn, I hope to see your face, and now I see it. So in other words, the goal of the prayer, it's not the response. It's not the expectation of response from something. It's the idea of having intimate relationships. Okay? Because if you ask people on the street, you said to someone, you go into a house of worship, whatever it is, what's the goal? Average person will say the response. You go and pray, and it's going to be an answer. It's going to be a response to a prayer. If you go a little higher in that level, you understand that it's the idea of being in a special state of mind, be able to have intimate relationships with yourself and something above you, above. I'll give you an example. I heard it from a great rabbi. I heard it from Rabbi Avi Weiss. He's a great leader in New York community, has his own yeshiva. And I heard from him, he related a story about the late Israeli soldier Nachshon Waxman. I don't know if you remember that name. He was captured by the Hamas, the terrorist group in Gaza, for a long time. And the Israeli was in search for him, and the family prayed for him, etc. So since he came from a religious Zionist background, it was a time that the special forces was about to go to those Hamas and try to rescue him. It was after a long negotiation that didn't lead anywhere, and they felt that that's the best way, is that just to go clandestinely to one of the sources that's supposed to have him. And so at that weekend, the mother, when they're supposed to get there, the mother asked all the women in the world to light an extra candle for Shabbat. As you know, we're lighting candle for Shabbat. She asked women to light extra candle in prayer for their son Nachshon. And the father of Nachshon asked all the men to have some psalms and some prayer and some study in a hope that the mission and everything will come out for good, and hopefully we'll be able to see the sun. So worldwide, women light candles, men prayer, etc. Unfortunately, it was a mission, and they have the body only, and officer get killed there, and one of the officers that led that mission. So one of the very unpleasant, nasty journalists approached the parents of Nachshon right after it's all said and done, and he said to them in an interview, "No, you are religious people, and you ask everyone to light candles and pray, and God, you know, all these people worldwide pray and light candles, and what happened?" And they answered, and just it's beyond words, the level of faith that they expressed as the parents, and they said, God did answer, God said no. And that's a very deep point that we try to deal with when it's come to prayer. When we said here in the parasha, when the ark will journey and Moses says, "Arise, God, and let your foes be scattered, and let those who hate you flee from before you." It's a very deep prayer. What does that prayer mean? In a sense, I heard it from Rabbi Weiss, it's not my idea. He explained it, and he said that, in a sense, God listened to a prayer, but sometimes, since it's an interaction, God said no. So in our language, the time of prayer is a time of, like they describe in Song of Songs, time of love. The problem, it's not the key reason for prayer. The idea of what we said on the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Ochila lakel achale fanav. I yearn to the Lord, I approach Him, I plead to Him, which means I ask the gift of language, I have the gift to be communicated. When we open the ark, right after that, we read a paragraph in Aramaic, Brich Shmei. And in that paragraph in Aramaic, we said, I am the servant of the Holy One, blessed is He. What does that mean, I am the servant? I am feeling God's presence. I feel that I'm responsible. I depend on you, God, but I'm also have some type of reliance. So there are two schools of thought. The Maimonides, and soon you see much more, Maimonides has the school of thought that it's the idea of responsibility. Nachmanides, however, hold that is reliance. But you can tie both together. It's like the feeling of God's presence. Feeling like nafal, like the noon, like you bow down before God and you try to have the communication of partnership between the two.
I'm a little lost here because
okay.
What I'm getting from this is that you don't know whether prayer is going to be worth anything. So why
all the prayer is a good point. All the prayer has meaning, but it's like sometimes the prayer, a person pray for something that is not good for him or her. Sometimes the prayer reach a different goals. Since the prayer itself, it's important for a person himself to feel connected, right? So the prayer as a goal by itself. But if you read the Soloveitchik, Rabbi Soloveitchik said in the Worship of the Heart, said as follows. You see it on here, they said as follows. Prayer finds, I'm just quoting from Rabbi Soloveitchik, his book called Worship of the Heart. Prayer finds its full, you see it, exoteric expression in the spiritual act of lifting up one's eyes, the inner cry of dependence upon God, the experience of complete, absolute dependence portrayed by the psalmist. I lift up my eyes to the mountain, from where will come my aid? When man is in need and prayer, God listens. One of God's attributes is Shomea, hear, listen, Shomea Tfilah, he who listens to prayer. Let us note that Judaism has never promised that God accepts all prayers. Acceptance of prayer, Rabbi Soloveitchik wrote, is a hope, a vision, a wish, a petition, but not a principle or a premise, which means the foundation of prayer is not the conviction of its effectiveness, but the belief that through it we approach God intimately. And the miraculous community embracing finite man and his creator is born. The basic function of prayer is not its practical consequences, but the metaphysical formation of a fellowship consisting of God and man. When we said on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, Vayavor Hashem al panav, that God took over the attribute of mercy over the anger, it means that there is a duality, that there is a strong correlation. It's like, I have the privilege to go many times to visit senior citizens, hospitals. I can't tell you how many times people said the following: Rabbi, can you please pray for me? And I ask a question. I ask you a question. If a person was observant person all of his or her life, and they still have the ability of speech, they have still the ability to pray, so why they need someone else to pray for them? We said many times that in Judaism there is no difference between you and me. We all equal in the eye of the Lord. The only difference is that teachers, rabbis, are more advanced in learning, so they can uplift you to be like them or above them. But more than that, we are all equal. So why that person who all of his or her life practice their faith, they now need someone else to pray for them? The answer is that some people feel beaten down. Right? There are some people who feel like they're expecting something and it didn't happen. So it's like a feeling of beaten down. And that's a very important point. Here, when Soloveitchik speaks about the worship of the heart, he speaks about partnership. Imagine, I just try to be more common. Imagine you have partnership with someone in a business. You have ups and downs, success and failure. That's the way business runs. Yes? That's the way it is. So, it doesn't mean you can, for example, in a relationship between people, you can love your spouse or partner, right? Even you agree to disagree, even there are conflicts. One of the beauty of love is that you have ups and downs and disagreements, yet you're still together. Correct? So in a relationship with God, is the same in that sense, that God is partner and is seeking for us to be partners with Him, while we have these dualities, which that's one of the beauty of Judaism. We allow, in a sense, to argue with God. I can give you many examples in the Torah that you see how even our greatest ancestors argue with God. Anyone have an example?
No. Moshe Rabbeinu, when Hashem
Excellent.
Go back.
Excellent. For example, Moses, when God decided to annihilate the nation because of the golden calf, Moses came up and argued with God. Moshe Rabbeinu said, what?
For 7 days.
For 7 days, argue and argue and argue. You shouldn't do it, you shouldn't do it. God said, why do you care? I make you a new nation. No, don't do it. Another example, earlier, Book of Genesis. Anyone come with the example?
Well, Abraham, when
Excellent.
God was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so what happened there? Abraham went before God and he said, don't do. Now think about it. These Sodom and Gomorrah, they are bad, right? Wicked people. I don't like to use the word evil because to me it's very hard. I believe that most of the people are good. They're making poor choices. They're making a lot of mistakes. But people as people, with all my years in clergy, I think people as people are good. It's just sometimes, unfortunately, they're making poor choices. But yet, you see a situation that is the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they're doing a lot of bad things, a lot of terrible things, and it's a situation that it's really deserved to have a very serious response of God. Yet Abraham, who is a far distance, he goes there and he starts negotiating with God. And God said to him, what did God say to him? Guess what? If there are, let's say,
10 people or whatever.
10 was the last
10,
one,
yeah.
but we start with more.
Yeah, it started with 50 and he...
50, go down, it said 10.
kept going lower and lower.
Lower was the minion. If there is a minion, if there is a 10 people, 10 righteous people, I promise I'll not destroy the cities. But you see this idea that it's a God's judgment, yet we still have the privilege to come up and ask and challenge. In a sense, it's not so bad in Judaism to have this concept of duality. Soloveitchik dealt with that a lot in his book Halachic Man. In that book, Soloveitchik comes from the point that the person can be a confirming person while he expresses his or her homo-religiousness, which means I can be part of community. I can be a conformist, which means I will do all the rituals that everyone does as part of the community. Yet I deserve to express myself in my own individuality, in my own way, which means I can be in a state of disagreement of things, but I still do things while I disagree with that. And in Judaism, it's not a bad to have this duality within the halachic man, within the person. It's not contradicted, unlike, for example, Catholicism, right? Or unlike other faith groups, that you just have to do it because someone said it, or because it's written by man, or something that's written there. In Judaism, we said that you can constantly challenge while you do things. You can do things and you'll be unhappy with doing it, and you constantly challenge that. And you can disagree, or you can do things in different manners, but you're still in that state of mind. Let's see another example. You bring an example. Mashal lema davar domeh. Here is an example. So the rabbi said, "Le'adam shenichnas letoch cheder chashuch." Imagine that the person who entered to a darkest room for the first time, right, and trips over the furniture. Each time he enters the room, he learns more and more where the furniture stands. In time, he becomes familiar with the room, and despite the darkness, knows how to get around. So too is the whole idea of death. There is a darkness in death that cannot be chased away, but it's possible to learn how to continue to live despite the darkness which forever remains. What does that mean? God created life and death, and it's part of creation. So since a person doesn't know how to communicate with God properly, the approach some rabbis hold, like Maimonides, that in order to do it properly, think that maybe tomorrow you'll not make it. God forbid, tomorrow maybe not opening your eyes. So it's like today is the last day of your life. You can continue smiling, you can continue to do everything right, you can be a happy person, but your mindset when you pray, your mindset what involved in spirituality is, you are in a state of darkness, but since there are certain darkness you cannot erase, right? But you can learn how to live with that, how you do it. So Rav Kook explained it, and he said, when you see great darkness, You cannot use knives or guns because it's darkness. You cannot fight darkness with ammunition. The only way to fight darkness is to light candle. So by lighting even a small candle, it's the darkness dissipated little by little. You create more lights. So Rav Kook said, and I love these words from Rav Kook. He said, "Hatzadikim ha'amitiyim," the righteous people, "einam kovlim al harish'ah," they do not complain constantly in bitterness, like you see soon in a parsha, about the darkness in the world. Ela mosifim tzidkut, but add more goodness to their life. Einam kovlim al choshech, they do not complain over darkness. Ela mosifim or, but add more light. Remember, Rav Kook, the first one, who passed at the 1935, was the whole idea of religious Zionism, believing in the land, and all this big to do, because it was a school of thought to this very day that as long as the Messiah is not here, the land is meaningless. Rav Kook hold that it's part of the redemption. It's part of the process of redemption of the Jewish people by having connectedness to the land, physical land. But the whole idea of him as a rejuvenator, him as a something who look upon the especially the secular Jews, the kibbutzim and all these secular Jews that build those places, and he said that they are people who doing teshuvah, who doing part of the process of expediting the Messianic era, was heavily criticized by many others. But his school of thought was that things will turn around for good, but at this point every step is good. He never took the whole idea of prayer. Even a person pray, because sometimes you see a sports teams, before they go to a game they make a prayer. Now, if they won the game, oh, God is great. What happened if it's the opposite? That's a different story, right? But the truth of the matter, right, Rav Kook said that is no such a thing, secular. He hold that everything is holy. In other words, when you study chemistry, it's holy by itself. When you study anything that it looks like a secular study, it's not. Because if you're serving God in that way, you embed God's world, right? You are partner with God. You're partner with God when you pray. You partner with God when you involve with the secular world, because you make the secular holy. You make it part of God's service to help God's creature, to help embed God's world. Okay? So in that sense, we getting deeper to the whole concept of prayer. If you see here, I brought you a quotation. We just jump a little further with running out of time. Here on 4 they see the whole idea of being in a moment while feeling the presence of God. Ibn Ezra, the great rabbi of the 12th century, said something very deep. Everybody is with me?
Where are you?
4.
4?
Yes. He speaks about prayer. He speaks about spirituality in our lives. So when we open the ark, it's the belief. We said a noon. It's like God removing the evil, and it's a time that the divine providence is like we have a personal intimacy with God in that moment. We open the ark and we're about to take out the Torah. Okay? So that's a very important spiritual moment that we can basically be together in the presence of God and pray. Now what we're doing in those prayers. Some rabbis were not comfortable of saying that prayer in Aramaic. It's not in every prayer book because they feel, you're asking God for small things, for living, for, small things. That's you shouldn't use this opportunity of a private meeting with God in such a level for mundane small things. You should look for broader need of the world. But one of the things when it's involved with prayer and spirituality is the whole idea of counting the days. Since a person never knows how long he or she live in this world, and therefore they have the special gift, the special credit card, limitation of credit card of speech, and they need to use it properly. So the Ibn Ezra said as follows, אדם דואג על איבוד ימיו ואינו דואג על איבוד ימיו. A person is concerned about the loss of money, but not the loss of days. דמיו חוזרים, ימיו אינם חוזרים. Money come and goes. Money can be replenished, but the days cannot. How beautiful and deep this statement. So when a person has those great opportunities, he's able to communicate with God, he's able to pray, he's able to feel the spirit, the spirituality of God, what he's doing with his days, what he's doing with that ability of being together with God. So how really person should feel these dualities, this tremendous connectedness with God. So here's an example. You see the nun and nud. So he interpreted in a way that it's a great chance, but don't use this opportunity in vain. This is a huge opportunity, huge chance for you to be in the presence of God. Now what are you doing at that time? So he said, it's a book of Proverbs that Rashi said, and it's also in the Talmud Yevamot 117a. They said, "K'mayim hapanim el hapanim, ken lev ha'adam el ha'adam." King Solomon said, as face answered to face in water, you stand on the water, you see reflection in the water, right? So if you smile, it smiles back, right? If you're angry, that face shows you anger. So does the man's heart to another. So the Talmud relate to that, and Rashi and also they said, Hamayim alalu, like water upon which one gazes and sees his reflection. If he is pleasant and gracious, the reflection is such. If he is pain and angry, the reflection is such. So too is one heart's in one's fellow person. If one loves the other loves him, and if he hates the other hates him. Now you think about much higher about God. So he said here, Rabbi David Aaron in a book called Seeing God, he said, if you want to encourage God's presence or God's essence, then you have to be willing to expose your own essence to God. God can only reflect what you are presenting. If you present yourself with genuineness, with authenticity, your beauty in truth, then you reveal your essence, and the essence of God will be revealed to you. You have to be real to see the real. So there are two schools of thought in conclusion when it's come to prayer. You have the Hannah, that she prayed for herself. She prayed for her need. She wants a baby, and she granted with Samuel, right? There is another inner spark of prayer that, like Abraham, prayed not for his own needs, but he prayed not just for others, but even the people that anger him and anger God, like Sodom and Gomorrah. That's a different level. We're using Abraham in our prayer as an epitome of righteousness. But again, all this concept of prayer and spirituality, especially in a time that you see the ark is open and it's a noon. It's like the opening the ark, like the symbol of opening the ark, and now you have a sacred moment. What do you do there? That's the whole mindset when it's come to tefillah and spirituality, and we will dwell with that in the future much further. If there's any question, we have another few minutes.
A while back you said, you raised the question of someone who says to the rabbi, pray for me.
Correct.
So what
okay, I wasn't sure if I answered that, but to make it clear, is the idea that since we all equal in the eye of God, and it's a word that I try to encourage each of you, that each of you has its own ability to speak with God. I can help you, lead you, teach you, but eventually you have to be without your cane, in a sense. You have to be able freely to communicate by yourself, because God created you the same as created me and everyone else, and therefore the communication is in your hand, the ability to communicate with your own language, with your own way, you are capable, but is something missing there that we need to have a discussion. And that was the point.
How do you know if there's something missing?
The point that missing is that if a person feel beaten up, if a person feel that in a state of agony, in a state that he cannot communicate with God, it means something with this communication that we talk in the past, 45 minutes, it's missing. Because if God it's part of me and I'm part of Him, and we are partners, so therefore we better communicate with each other. The minutes there is something there that it's lacking with communication, that created issue. And we need to find out what exactly happened that a person feel a distance. Because God is in a sense in search of man. And man is not alone. They are all together as a partner of creation. In that sense, as we told you a story about the little girl, God is in a search, constant search, the same way as a man. He's just waiting.
How do you know if something is missing?
Something is, if a person needs, in a sense, if a person cannot speak, that's a different story. But since we have the ability of language, and you see in many places in the Torah that take example as Moses. At the beginning, God asked him to speak to Pharaoh. And he said to God, find someone else. And God said, all right, take Aaron. And then all of a sudden, when they're about to speak to Pharaoh, Moses is able to communicate directly to Pharaoh. Which again, try to show you the level of communication, the art of language, the ability to communicate from your heart. It's something that granted to each of us. A person just needs to look upon himself truthfully and find that point of communication to find out what exactly needs to improve the communication. But that's something that granted to each and every person. The ability of language, the ability to communicate, that's part of what is called the spiritual prayer. The prayer and spirituality are interconnected. That's one. The same way as we try to say that we are God in a sense, we are part of image of God, we are partners with God. It's applied to all the levels of our lives. It's applied to how we communicate with God and how we communicate with others and how we communicate with ourselves, how we view ourselves. It's part of the way that we communicate with the external world. It's like Carl Jung used to say, that me and myself in the mirror and me and the entire world outside of my small world. Thank you very much.